Welcome to Global Insider Talks. Today, we're going to talk about global sustainability and what you should consider as you work internationally. I'm so glad today to be joined by Rachel Bowen-Pittman, Executive Director of the United Nations Association of the United States of America at the UN Foundation. Rachel leads a grassroots advocacy movement of more than 20,000 Americans in more than 225 chapters who are dedicated to supporting the important work of the United Nations in their communities and beyond. She is responsible for guiding the strategic work of the UNA USA, where she cultivates key partnerships with the UN and US government officials, oversees membership expansion, and spearheads important advocacy initiatives to help the US advance the far-reaching goals of the UN. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks so much for being with us. It's really meaningful for us to have you as part of our interview series, and we really appreciate your time. Let's get right into it here and begin by helping us understand the role of the UN Foundation and how the UNA USA fits within that organization.
Yeah, so the UN Foundation is a strategic partner of the United Nations. And basically, what we do at the UN Foundation is bring together people, ideas, organizations to support the work of the UN. And UNA USA, which I lead, as you said, is a grassroots organization. And our focus is to work on US-UN relations. So we are a grassroots movement of Americans who love the UN, support the UN, and we do a lot of work in our local communities. We do education programs, outreach, volunteering, all around the work of the UN. And we also do advocacy. It's very important that we get the US government to support the UN, specifically by paying their dues with the UN. And having strong leadership at the UN. So we are a part of the foundation. They do a lot of different things. We have campaigns and alliances, but we're part of the advocacy side of the foundation.
It sounds like you're incredibly busy, which I appreciate. So we often hear, Rachel, about the UN's 17, I might add, ambitious sustainable development goals, the SDGs, as our audience might be aware of. So what are these? Why do they exist? Are they attainable?
I'll answer yes first to that last question. But in 2015, all 193 member states at the United Nations agreed on these global goals to achieve them by 2030. And these goals have the power to change the world. I mean, they focus on things like how do we end poverty? How do we fight inequity? How do we protect our planet? How do we have economic growth and sustainability through these global goals? And what's so fascinating about them is that they are global, meaning that it's not just for the global South, it's for all over the world. And also, which people don't really think about, it's not just for these 193 nations to solve. We need people, businesses, organizations, people like you and me, to get involved to help solve these 17 sustainable development goals.
Let's dive into one of them a little bit more deeply, and I'll just choose poverty because that's something that is right in our backyard here in the United States, and it's an issue that's faced by countries everywhere around the world. So what is happening on the poverty front?
Yeah, so with poverty, we are looking at how do we as a nation, let's take the US, right? And poverty, we know, was extremely impacted, and we took a step backward when it came to the pandemic. Yeah. So you have people that lost their jobs, they now have food insecurity. You had students that weren't really productive in school. All of those issues will lead people to stay in poverty. So what are we doing as a country with our policies? What are we doing even at the local level with our different organizations that work on these issues to come together to make sure that we're moving people out of poverty so that they can have a sustainable life. So there are a lot of different facets when it comes to poverty and issues that you have to solve in order to help people that are having those circumstances.
And so is your organization providing funding to help address these issues? Or can you talk a little bit more about, the role that you play in helping directly address these issues? Because, Rachel, the UN is often criticized for, putting these very ambitious goals out there and then maybe not, making progress quick enough.
Yeah, and the UN is taking the lead, but it's not up to the UN to do it alone. So for my organization, we're educating individuals about, what's going on with the different sustainable development goals. But then on a local level, remember, we're a grassroots movement. We're localizing it. How are these issues affecting our own local community? We have different chapters, so it depends on where you live. They may do fundraisers. They may go to a homeless shelter or a food bank and volunteer for the day. But what they're doing is they are telling these stories to individuals about what's going on in their community. But how does it relate to people who are in Ukraine or who are in South Sudan, and they're having the same exact issue? So it's kind of like you solve things as an individual on a small spaces, but it will have a global effect. And that's our role at UNA USA. We go local to help global, but we also magnify the issues of what's going on globally.
What's really incredible is you're helping the end user, the person who is living in poverty, who isn't able to, put food on the table, et cetera. You talked earlier, Rachel, about how this is really a me and you issue that we all collectively have to solve. It's not the UN's only issue. It's not a country's issue only. It also includes businesses, companies, and as we help organizations expand into new markets, we know that these companies are thinking about how do we do that in a sustainable way, meeting the goals of the UN. In some ways, obviously, there are other factors at play, but can you talk a little bit more about your experience working with companies and what, maybe give an example of like what they're doing?
Yeah. So with companies, they are part of the community, right? Doesn't matter if they're in Minneapolis or if they are somewhere else around the world. And so what will happen is we will build partnerships with companies to solve local issues that are happening. For example, UNA LA chapter, they wanted to help those young people who are moving out of foster care that may not have a home. So they partnered with local organizations to raise funds. And at the end, the end result was they helped them furnish their home so that they have, a shelter, a comfortable place to live so that they can go out and find a job and, live a successful life. So when it comes to companies, it means that they need to work with the local community, find those local organizations, talk to the local governments about the needs and figure out how they can help within their lane. What are some of the things that they may be able to contribute? Their individuals that work, different types of resources. It could be knowledge resources, it can be funding, but there are ways for companies to get involved. And so what we do is we connect with different businesses that are in our communities and tell them what we're working on and see where there could be really good collaborations.
How I want to give you an opportunity to plug your organization. If I'm an executive and I'd like to get more involved, how would I do that?
First, go to unausa.org to reach out to us. And what we'll do is tell you what we're doing on a national level, because there are things that you may want to get involved. We have programs at the United Nations, for example, and also connect you with a chapter that is in your local city and see how we can help you partner and participate in the work that we do.
Thanks, Rachel. One last question. Can you talk a little bit about how the knowledge sharing between the U.S. and other entities like the one that you're leading here in the U.S., how does that work? You're working, I would assume, at a global level? Talk to me about how that works.
And when you say the U.S., are you talking about the U.S. government or?
The UNA USA,
Yes.
I would imagine that you're sharing best practices, things that are working here in the States with other countries.
Oh, absolutely. So UNA USA, we're part of the World Federation of UNAs. So there are over 100 UNAs around the world. And we connect with them consistently to talk about the work that we're doing here in the United States and how that can transcend to other areas of the world and vice versa. So we do a lot of learning with different organizations like our other UNAs, for example.
Thanks, Rachel. We're coming to the end of our time here, but I'd like to ask you if you have any final words.
Yeah, I just want everyone, I'm so happy, Jeff, that we are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals today. There are only 7 years left to the end of this agenda. There's so much work to be done. And your customers should know that you can get involved, you can make an impact, use your resources and your talents to help solve these global issues. And please, I welcome you all to visit unausa.org and get involved with us, and we'd be happy to partner.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And thank you all for watching this interview. For more information about Factum Global, visit factumglobal.com. And thank you very much for joining us.